welcome to the show. I'm your host, Christopher Michael, joined by Christopher David.
Hi.
And today we're talking about all things chickens.
Our favorite topic.
Let's get into it. Christopher David, we've had chickens for 3 years.
Going on 4?
Mm-hmm.
July, it'll be 4 years.
And it's been, I think, quite the experience.
It really has been. I grew up with raising 50 chickens at one time just for eggs and selling them to neighbors when I was in middle school and high school. And that was an experience. But as I've gotten older, I've been way more responsible, and I absolutely adore our boys and girls that we have now on the farm.
I didn't have any chickens when I was younger because I grew up in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And they probably weren't even legal, to be honest with you. I didn't know anyone that had even really seen a chicken in real life unless you had gone to like the petting zoo or something.
Then when we made the move down to the farm here, it was that July 4th, that we were able to acquire some black astrolorps from a farm in a neighboring county. It was really tough because that was when kind of the chicken rush was going on, if you could call it that, where everyone...
Yeah, during COVID. Yeah, everyone was at home and they wanted to have chickens.
Chickens were sold out, and yeast was sold out.
And
everyone,
toilet paper.
Yeah, everyone automatically became bakers.
Yeah, and then stopped.
Yeah, now they're done. It's much easier to buy from the store instead of making it yourself.
Also, sidebar, if you have a bread machine, you're not a baker. If you're making bread in a bread machine, you just put all the ingredients in, set the timer, and then the bread's made when you get back. That's not actually making bread. Just so you know.
Yeah. Anyway, we absolutely love our chickens.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a huge learning curve for us, even though I had chickens. Like I said, I'm way more responsible now, and you really do have to pay attention and take care of their cuts and scrapes and their illnesses that arise from time to time. And keeping them from predators is a full-time job as well. I don't like the idea that people think that chickens are expendable.
Yeah.
That they're just kind of like, you can easily, it's expected to have them die. Or like in the Foxfire series, they were interviewing that stupid bitch from North Georgia that said that it's a given that poultry will have cholera. No, it's not, dumb fuck. It's your stupidity and lack of management that causes it.
Yeah, it has everything to do with management.
It really does.
Yep.
Let's talk about your rational, irrational fear of birds and how this relates to chickens.
I don't even know where it started. I just have always, up until we got chickens and I started working with birds, I have always just had this irrational fear of birds. And I have no idea where it really came from. The only bad experience I had with a bird was a sun conure named Cappy that my irresponsible parents bought for some reason. I think my stepmother wanted something exotic and she always got what she wanted.
Well, like her, the bird was a bitch.
Yeah. And he like pierced my ear, like the lobe of my ear.
That had to hurt so bad.
It was probably one of the worst pains I've ever felt, because I mean he just latched onto it. And I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. And I also just don't like when things swoop. Right, so it just makes me nervous when I see like large flocks of bird in the sky that can just swoop down and hit me. That's kind of where the irrational. It never happened. I just had the.
I was gonna say, has that ever happened to you before?
No, that's why it's rational.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, our boys and girls do not swoop and attack or bite us. The only one that did bite us lost his head a few months ago.
He's not here no more.
He's no longer with us. But the other two boys, George and Thomas, named after our founding fathers, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, they're definitely, boy chickens are so much different than girl chickens.
They're basically a different breed, like a whole different species of bird, because obviously they're very loud and obnoxious.
Yeah.
They tell every predator on the planet or within earshot, so it's about 2 miles, that they're there and come eat us,
Yeah.
and we're going to let you know exactly our position.
Yeah, there's like no survivability sense to them.
And I understand that chickens come from the Malay jungle fowl in Southeast Asia, but they've been domesticated for like roughly what, 8 to 10,000 years, and no one thought to breed like a mute rooster. Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. I don't know if it's not maybe possible to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
They had those like mute barking dogs,
Oh yeah, and they're
you know.
weird though. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'd want that.
Well, okay, but I think the point of this story is that roosters love to let everybody
Yes.
know that they're there, and it's a pretty easy meal.
And because we live on the ideas of permaculture, they're in zone 1.
Hmm.
They're quite close to the house, probably what, less than 25
Well, if
feet.
the well's 30 feet, they're, yeah, maybe 40 feet or so. Yeah.
So we hear them quite often. I think it was quite funny at first.
It was because when they started to learn how to do it, it was more like a croak,
Yeah.
something.
It was fun to watch them grow up. But yeah, like I was saying, boys are so much different than girls. They have two totally different dispositions.
Hmm.
Because the girls, for the most part, are quite happy to just stand around, do their own thing. They love to huddle together and preen themselves. The boys are just like on all of the time.
And by that, it's that they want to fuck,
Yep.
they want to crow, they want to tell all the girls where to stand, where to sit, when to take a dust bath.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically like Klaus Schwab, but just in a bird form.
Yeah, they're just so like authoritarian with
Hmm.
it, and it's kind of annoying because the girls just want to. They're perfectly fine if you just let them do what they want to do. They're incredibly productive. They will go out and scratch up an entire garden and not miss a spot
Hmm.
if you just allow them to do what they want to do. And like sometimes the boys interrupt that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
You know, I can see the plus of the boys are that they watch everything. You know, if there's a sparrow or a bluebird, they're going to alert everyone, letting them know that something's up. At the same time, the micromanaging is a little much. And I think as we continue to breed and select for certain dispositions, it's going to be like much tamer boys.
Hmm.
There was an article, I think it was on Mother Earth News, talking about a lady that breeds her own chickens was selecting for a more docile rooster so that he wasn't jumping on her or jumping on the girls nonstop. And she was saying that she wants kind of a rooster in the middle, so it's not aggressive all the time and it's not very docile. I personally think that leaning towards the docile disposition is much better and more ideal for our situation. We don't need a rooster that mates every 10 minutes.
Hmm.
So if it wants to mate once a year, I'm fine with that because they do over time. We have 14 girls and 2 boys, and they do start to erode the feathers. I'm not really sure the proper term for that, but the feathers wear down on the backs on some of the more popular girls, and we have to put little protective coverings over them. So having a rooster that is a lot less sexually active would be ideal.
Yeah. So let's talk about. So we have black Australorp chickens, and
Yes.
there's tons of different breeds. What made you go with the black Australorp as opposed to another breed?
I got into black astrolorps because I really enjoy their disposition. They're excellent egg layers. I think they're the most productive egg layers around, and they have beautiful colorings, even though they're solid black. When the sun hits it, it's like emerald, amethyst, and their beautiful bright red combs are just really striking. I think they're also really hard workers. The 2 most productive girls are Abigail and Madison. Abigail was one of the first of the 6, and since we got them on July 4th, we named them after the founding fathers' wives.
Mm-hmm.
So Abigail hatched our eggs that we had, or fertilized eggs that we had purchased from Meyer Hatchery in Ohio, and only one was fertile, and that was Madison. And Abigail instilled an incredible work ethic in Madison, and those two little ladies are out there nonstop working. Rain or shine or snow or wind, those girls are out there scratching away, making this place very productive.
Yeah, you can set Abigail or Madison out there, and they will just till up a garden like no one else.
Single-handedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they just love to do it.
The first 6 girls that we got were Martha, Hannah, Sybil, Abigail, Betsy, and Molly. Molly is the mother who raised our ducklings,
Mm-hmm.
which was really sweet. But she only did it for 2 weeks and then left them on their own. Fortunately, ducklings grow up very quickly. So within those 2 weeks, they were able to take care of themselves, basically, and they didn't have to have extra heat like chicks would.
She was like, "This was so much fun. Bye."
Yeah, she left, man. She was out of there. Martha is a big girl. She lays huge eggs.
I love my Martha.
But she is such a sweetheart. She wants to lay there, sun herself. She wants to preen. She wants to take baths when she wants to. She doesn't want to be bothered by anybody.
She loves sitting in a good bush.
She does.
She just loves a good bush.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a good bush to
Yeah.
rest your face in?
Yeah. She just loves that. She's sweet because we go out there and sit with them, and she always has a spot.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's usually wherever the fuck she wants to sit.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the middle of the path or anywhere else.
And so Hannah and Sybil are kind of like the bitchy girls.
Yes, Hannah is the top girl and Sybil is a psychopath.
She's a lot sweeter than she was. She just has really crazy eyes, and she's one of the ones that used to go and randomly attack for fun.
Yeah, she would jump on the backs of the other girls and try to pull out their feathers, which is incompatible here. So it's just she needed to, calm down a bit. And once we had the roosters, they pretty much told her her new place in life.
Yeah, because we introduced them when the roosters were mostly fully grown.
Yeah, because I do want to mention that we learned, not the hard way, but we did, observe that the roosters mature a lot quicker than the hens do.
Like twice as fast.
Yes. So when the boys are like 4 months old, they want to mate. And the hens that grew up with them the same age are not there yet at all. They have at least another 2 months to mature. So that meant that we took the boys and separated them until the girls started to lay eggs. And then we reintroduced them to like what you were saying about Sybil.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of different fights, and to see who was going to be top dog. Abigail threw her little body in there, and she was beating ass and taking names.
Little Spitfire.
Yeah, she got like 3 fights in a row.
She is the littlest girl, and she was kicking everybody's ass.
It was really funny to see because the boys were like, "I'm not interested in that." I don't think they mess with her at all.
Oh yeah, for a while, because George he's the leader, and she absolutely told him, not right now.
Nope. Not interested.
Mm-hmm. The reason why we started to get chickens in the first place was so we could have a regular supply of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 was a really good number to start with, I think, because it had been years since I had raised any myself, and you hadn't ever before. So it was nice just to get a small number of them, but enough so that they had a flock to deal with. And you don't want them to have 1 or 2. Obviously never have 1 chicken because they're flock oriented. But I think that was a good number to start with. And it wasn't hard on the budget. They didn't eat a whole lot. And we were able to make large pens for them. Yeah, at least like the one that they're all in right now, it's 50 foot long by 20 foot wide is the center pen. And then we have additional pens off of that circling the coop. Some of them are orchard food forest rows, and then others are actually garden beds themselves that we rotate them throughout the year.
One thing I think that kind of surprised me within the first year of having the chickens was just the amount of eggs that they produced.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the 6 of them. It was absolutely insane.
Yeah, especially in springtime, we actually had to figure out ways to deal with them because it was just the 2 of us. during, it was during the height of the pandemic, so the neighbors weren't interested in talking to us at all. So you found out a really great way to store them.
Yeah. It's just water and hydrated lime. You can get it, I think, at like Lowe's or Home Depot or.
We got it from an Ace Hardware
Okay.
store. That's a co-op nearby.
Yeah, it's I don't remember the exact. It's to do with like the how much water versus how much lime,
Hmm.
and you have to do it in increments. So you can just add more water and add more lime if any of it evaporates, but you can store them up to a year or 2 years. And in the show notes, I'll put the link of the video that we watched on how to do it.
Yeah, but it lasted a whole year
Oh
because
yeah,
you
absolutely.
went
Yeah.
to bake with them and they were totally sound.
Yep, they were perfectly fine. And you can tell a really good way if you put an egg into like a little pot of water, as long as it's covered and the egg lays down on its side, perfectly fine, 100% fresh. If it kind of is tilted up but it's still on the bottom, then it's like on its way out and you can still use it, but you need to use it soon. And then if it floats, it's not good.
Yeah,
You don't want that.
definitely not.
And yeah, after a year, it was still on its side in that preservation method. So perfectly fine to cook and eat, and they tasted just as normal as a fresh 1 or 2 day old egg.
Right. And then with the chicken coops themselves, because we're technically in a flood zone, but there's no documented evidence that it ever flooded here, and the neighbors who have lived here their entire lives said that it hasn't. We just wanted to be safe about it and elevated the chicken coops 2 feet off the ground. But that has actually come in really handy because we have had zero predation issues with raccoons or minks or fox or possums or cats, coyotes, which are all around here. But because it's elevated, it helps give that extra safety off the ground, so
Mm-hmm.
these animals can't break into the coop like they more easily could if it was just on the level ground.
Yeah, and so we built the first one probably pretty quickly. I think we could just kind of didn't really do it from a plan.
It
We just
doesn't
kind of put
look
it
bad,
together.
but yeah, it is kind of ratchet.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that we learned a lot in between,
Yeah, I think so.
and with the new coop that we have. But it also taught us the value of having more than one coop for chickens that are sick, or if we decide that one of them that goes broody, we want to have babies, something like that, so they're able to quarantine.
Yeah. Tying into like building resilience, I think that they're really exceptional to have on the farm or the yard if you're on a smaller property. The place that they're in right now, we're in the inner sanctum of the farm, if you will, is about 2 acres. And that's pretty much the extent that we've been able to cultivate within the 3 years of being here. So I think that they're incredibly suited for smaller sized yards. You don't need acres and acres of them. Having said that, if you're worried about budget, trying to feed them, or just the amount of expense starting out with the coop and the fencing and the feeders and that sort of thing, I would suggest trying out bantams. Just getting a smaller version of the regular sized chickens. They still lay decent sized eggs. And, I think like Plymouth Rock bantams lay almost as many as the full size chicken would. They take up a fraction of the space.
So are they like half the size of a normal chicken, the third.
Yeah, easily. And they take up just a fraction of the food that a regular sized chicken would consume. But I think it's like on like two bantams make a full size chicken,
Yeah.
basically. And I think that would be an excellent idea to have if you are starting out. And I'm even thinking about it myself for us in the future,
Mhm.
because I'm concerned how things are going with having enough food for them. But with the roosters, just how loud they are, they let everybody know that they're there. And, when people are starving, which people will be since they're not getting off their ass and growing any food, they're going to be looking for meals like that. And so I am concerned about the safety of our flock. And if we have smaller chickens, we're able to kind of fit them into smaller coops and probably easier to secure structures. That means like in one of the storage containers or a shed, you could fit a flock in there a lot easier than you would a full size flock, and they were going to be a lot quieter.
Let's talk about all the ways that we use the chickens. So not only just for their eggs, but there's just so many different utilizations on the farm.
I love that they are excellent soil rehabilitation animals. They're in there scratching up the soil. Their poop attracts a lot of microorganisms that help build the soil up, like earthworms. They are great at processing fallen fruits, pest pressure, eating all the grasshoppers and earwigs and Japanese beetles. They love them. Utilizing them just for meat, I think, is absolutely asinine. Because
It seems very wasteful.
it really is, because it is a huge investment
Yeah.
when you're putting all this time and energy and resources into growing this animal out and having this partnership with them, especially their contributions to building up the soil fertility, which is huge here because the soil when we arrived was just absolutely depleted and dead. So it's absurd to me to raise them up even for 6 months and then eat them for one meal.
It also speaks to the entitlement of people.
They have to have a meat
Yeah.
source every single day of the week.
I think it's like the majority of people, at least in North America, have meat almost every single meal, if not at least once a day.
Right. And that's what we've talked about this before, but people just think it's a birthright that
Mhm.
they can consume meat all the time. And talking to an elderly neighbor, he's in his 80s now, was saying that when he was growing up, they rarely had meat and they had all sorts of farm animals. But because of that investment in raising those animals, like chickens, for instance, would you rather have them lay eggs every single day or eat them for one meal and now the whole egg production thing's out the window?
Yeah, and because when you think about it, with the eggs, yes, obviously you can just eat eggs, but there are so many things that you can make with the eggs that it's like value added
Right.
products
Yeah.
into that one thing, and then instead of that you just raise a bunch of meat chickens so that you can continue to be gluttonous. I don't know. I find it personally morally irresponsible to raise them that way.
Hmm.
That's just an opinion.
Sure. But like as we were saying just a moment ago, their contributions outside of just eggs or meat is pretty astounding when they're helping with the pests in the soils. Like I said, we have really bad soils here, and their poop is just phenomenal at helping plants grow. It's the comparison between the plants growing inside their pen versus outside is amazing. It's quite stark. We have elderberry bushes, we have hazelnuts inside there. I want to make their pen as jungle like as possible because that's where they originally come from. So they enjoy that overhead cover, especially in summertime, so they get the shade from it. So the elderberries have grown up probably 3 times the size inside the pen with access to their poop versus plants that have been grown further away from them.
Oh yeah, the Marge elderberry that we have in there is gigantic.
She's huge. Whereas she's probably 15 feet or more, whereas the other ones planted further away that don't have access to the fertilizer are maybe 8 feet, if that.
Yeah, she's like what, 15, 20 feet high now.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that's in not that much time, and it happened pretty quickly.
That's in 2 years time.
Yeah.
And then, so the new pen that they're in right now, we planted 2 peach trees, 1 Reliance peach and 1 Carolina Gold peach, and then a Terry heirloom apple. And then we have autumn olive bushes, which they love the berries to autumn olive.
Yeah, they are obsessed with them.
Yeah, and fortunately, it's very prolific and it's a frost tolerant plant, so it does really well here, and it puts nitrogen in the soil as well. So we planted a bunch of them inside the pen. We have a non-native mimosa tree as well. And so they all can grow up and provide shade for the girls. Being black, they absorb a lot of that heat during the summertime. And so they're very prone to overheating. So having all these plants in there gives them cover, provides food, and utilizes the fertilizer there, but then also gives them shade.
They love some good shade.
They really do.
I wanted to go back for just a minute to when we have the coops 2 feet off the ground.
Hmm.
It also is a great place for them to dust bathe.
Yeah, that's right. Because it keeps it really dry. So it doesn't matter if it's raining outside, they can even go underneath there and have a dust bath.
Yeah, it's important for them because that helps to, if they have any mites or
Hmm.
anything on them, helps to suffocate them, and it actually makes them very clean.
Yeah. And you said it's very therapeutic for you to watch them do
Oh
it.
my gosh, I love it. That's one of the other things I wanted to say that the chickens add to the property is like emotional therapy.
Hmm.
I love watching a chicken dust bathe because it is such a almost a dance that they do, and they fall asleep doing it because it's just so comforting and nourishing to
Hmm.
them. To watch them do it is kind of crazy, especially if you're just really anxious about something, you're feeling a little bit depressed. Spending time in nature anyway is just a really good tonic. But we also just love sitting with the chickens, and they jump up on us and sit on our laps. And
The personalities, they're, every single one of them has their own personality, good or bad,
yeah,
and, many in between. So that's why it's so sickening to see these animals by the thousands raised as a commodity, as a machine to be extracted from so that farmers, large and small, can make a profit from. It's very psychopathic. And I have no problem with chickens being raised like in a Joel Salatin method, where yes, they are raised for meat, but they are done, it's done in the most humane way possible. And it's to honor the animal so that they can live out their life in the way that they were intended to do so. So they're out in the field eating, they're sleeping at night with the lights turned off. Whereas industrial ag, they're packed together in their own poop all the time. There's all sorts of insects crawling over their feet and infesting that shit that they can't take dust baths in. They can't enjoy life at all. It's very basically a prisoner of war type life. And then they're gassed or they're killed, and they're either gassed or put down another way. It's just a very psychotic system that it doesn't have to be that way.
yeah. There was a study that was done in Scandinavia, one of like Norway or Denmark, and it basically said, it translated to the United States. It says that if 1 in 3 families had chickens, there would be no need for a commercial chicken industry.
That's pretty scary to the commercial chicken industry,
Exactly. That's
And
why they don't. That's why they don't want people to be resilient and have chickens on their own. They want to be relied on.
yes, exactly. One of the major reasons why we wanted to do it ourselves, and also expanding on that idea, after we purchased the ducks, we saw just how they were coming from McMurray Hatchery in California. That's a very long journey for newborn babies to be shipped all the way across the country. Then at the post office distribution center,
Mm.
the people working there, I'm trying to be politically correct with it, did not give a fuck about the welfare of those animals at all. And I was very close to going over that counter and beating that jackass's ass. So after that experience, we decided, look, if we want to do this again, let's get some boys so that we can start breeding our own flock so that they don't have to be shipped all the way across the country. Even with Meyer Hatchery, I really like them, and no, they're not a sponsor or anything like that. I really like their customer service and the quality of their chickens that they breed. I still wanted to have that type of supply line much closer to home. And that, that's what we talk about when we say simplifying. It's not living in a cardboard box or anything like that. It's reducing the supply lines.
And the first 6 girls that we got from a local farm.
Yeah, that's right. We picked them up. Having said that, with those girls, the genetics weren't as good
Yeah.
as I would like to continue perpetuating the breed. And I also wanted to make sure that I got a high quality flock that I could continue breeding, because this is a heritage breed chicken. So I didn't want to get a breed that was kind of mainstream. I wanted to get something that was a heritage breed that we could preserve that legacy and that contribution to humanity. So that's why I went with the black Astrolorps.
Have you thought of other breeds that you would want to get?
I think the Barred Plymouth Rocks
Mm.
would be another dual purpose heritage breed that would do really well here.
I really like the brown laced Wyandottes. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're so beautiful.
I know the golden lace and silver lace as
Yeah.
well are just stunning. Yeah, I really like them. The thing is with the roosters, that's it, when you're breeding, it's really challenging because there's only so much you can handle. And it is expensive when you start having to do fences and different coops and all the food and stuff like that. So we have to kind of manage what we're working with right now within our resource constraints.
Yeah, and about the fences, so that's to obviously keep them in, but it's also to keep predators out. And I remember reading on, it was either Reddit or some other forum, where a woman says it's inevitable that one of your chickens is going to get killed by a predator. And I think that's a defeatist attitude, but it takes off that responsibility for you. It's a management issue.
It
If
is.
any of those girls died because of a predator, it's going to be because something we did wrong.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because once again, people just view chickens as expendable.
Yeah.
That's so stupid with the amount of time and energy and money that's going into these things. It's a huge investment. Are they going to just willy-nilly deal with their stocks like that, or treat their children like that, or treat themselves like that? It's stupid.
And kind of going back to, you were talking about all the girls and the boys, they have personalities. All of them. Every time that I go sit out there and put my chair out there, my little girlfriend Maya comes up and sits on my lap, and it's almost without fail. She's one of the first one that comes over to say hi. They can remember up to 100 faces, so these are quite intelligent beings.
That's right.
And I think people, they don't see them that way.
That's a huge cultural problem that we
need
have
to change that.
Yeah, because it goes off of that psychopathy. And if we realize that those animals are sentient beings and have feelings and emotions themselves, maybe not in the way that humans express it, but nonetheless, they still have emotions, we might actually feel uncomfortable about eating them and gassing them to death, or in the case of if they have to shut down like a chicken house for contamination or anything, they turn the ventilation systems off so that the several thousand birds suffocate in their own waste.
Yeah, sometimes millions in there.
Yeah. So
horrible, disgusting. It's evil. And I get super, super duper irritated. And that's something that if I saw someone physically abusing or hurting an animal, I don't think I would be able to control myself.
1,000%.
And how I react with it.
Yep.
But if you are supporting these chicken industries, you are part of the entire problem,
and you're part of that abuse.
Yeah, and I've said before, someone that I know, when we're talking about a discussion about meat, they say, all I know is that it comes from the store and it's in styrofoam.
How immature and juvenile and cruel that statement is.
Yeah,
they don't have the capacity to understand what they just implied.
Yeah, and so, if you really need to think about it, and just like with other topics that we've talked about, with the clothes that you're wearing, with other things, you have to look at those industries and see, are you just supporting the corporatocracy, or what actions are you doing that's contributing to that evil?
So many municipalities are now allowing a certain amount of chickens to be raised on site, and you could be doing that with, say, 3 to 6 bantams if financial constraints and whatnot. That's a great way to start helping to reducing that dependence, and also that stop patronizing these psychopathic industries.
I think it would be remiss of us to not bring that up during that conversation, that these are psychopathic industries and you do need to get away from them. And that's what we talk about when we say do a parallel system,
Hmm.
create something different so that your resources are more localized.
Absolutely. And it's not a whole, I mean, it doesn't really take a whole lot to just raise a few chickens and feed them table scraps, get them out in the yard to start eating that grass that you might have growing, and then planting fruit trees and things like that to start help supplementing their diet.
Yeah, and for the love of God, please give them enough space to live and have recreation because
Absolutely.
they need it. They get bored just like we do. They need to be able to go out. They need things that interest them that they have to figure out. Like we have this ladder that we have for them to roost on, and we have these two like water trough barrels that we've turned over that they
Hmm.
can go into. They need to have that interaction with the world around them. You can't just keep them in a tiny 10 by 10 little thing with a coop that's a couple of pieces of plywood.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Tractor Supply coops that are like $500 that are, I mean, the one that you built, it was an 8 by 4 coop, which houses 16 birds at night. They don't go in it during the day. So that's why we're able to keep it smaller and more economical. Except to, they go in the some of the girls go in there to lay eggs, of course, but the majority of them are outside under the covers if they need it, if inclement weather, but then the most of the time they're out there scratching around. And the main thing when you have that type of space is to make sure that they have something to scratch in. Having that bare soil is very counterproductive. You need to be able to put leaves, grass clippings, hay, straw, pine needles all in there so that they're very active and moving and keeping busy and, like you're saying, being occupied. Because when they're not, they start to peck each other, they start pulling out feathers, and then also it's not sanitary because they're literally in their own poop all the time.
And that's a big problem because one of the main afflictions of chickens is bumblefoot, which
Hmm.
is when they get a cut or scrape on the bottom of their foot, and then that gets infected with the poop and mud and stuff that they're walking in if they're in that situation, and that's totally avoidable. We had one girl that looked like she had bumblefoot once. It was probably more so gout, so we dealt with it with antibiotics, but that is the only one we've ever had.
Right, because we keep the ground covered with, we've got a lot of hay here. So we keep cutting it and throwing it in there, and they absolutely love it. I also did want to mention the whole, I can't remember the correct term for it, but it's where they keep piling the bedding inside, and after like 6 months to a year, they'll clean it out. I think it's the deep litter method. I think that's not helpful at all. I don't really like that idea. At most, it's every 2 weeks that we clear out the pine shavings in our coop because that just invites the mites and the parasites in there and the lice.
And other bugs that we probably couldn't even see.
Especially in summertime. Because when they're talking about the deep litter method, there was one place that was saying that it's composting. Honey, if it's composting, it's damp and it's not good for those birds.
No, and if it's composting, there's going to be flies and stuff in it. We're not trying to do that.
Yeah, so that's why every 2 weeks we will clean it out. In the summertime, it's every week.
Yeah, it
Because
has to be. Yeah,
yeah, because every day, basically, we have the we'll call them bales. I don't know what they're called, but they're from Tractor Supply, and they're all the pine shavings. We will every night before they go in there to roost, we'll throw down a new layer of that for a week during the summertime, and then in winter, it's every 2 weeks. And then I will rake all of that out into the wheelbarrow, and then I'll take it and put it either on the garden or around the base of fruit trees. And it's oh my god, it's just perfect for fertilizer. It's the right combination of nitrogen and carbon, so it's just mixes perfectly, and all the plants just adore it. But we haven't had a mite issue or a lice issue at all,
hmm
and we definitely keep up on those girls, making sure that everything is okay.
yeah, and that's an important thing to do. Also, if that you're going to get chickens, you have to be out there and understand when they're being normal, when they're not being normal.
Yes.
Especially like a big issue is being egg bound, where
Mm-hmm.
they're not able
They're
to,
listless and they're
yeah, past
Really,
the egg.
right, droopy.
Yeah, if you don't catch that, they could die within 24 hours.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like those serious situations that you have to be in tune and observant to
Yeah.
understand what they're doing.
So far with 16 birds, we've only had three, I'll call them medical scares or instances where we needed to make sure that they were okay and give them medication. The one with was what we thought was bumblefoot, but it seems like it was might be gout because it's no longer an issue and it's there was no cut under the foot at all. It was just
No.
swollen.
Yeah, so we did a round of antibiotics.
Right. And the next one was Emily. She had an ear infection, which we put Neosporin on the exterior of the ear, and then we gave her antibiotics as well. And then Martha, she tripped over one of the feeders and I think hit her throat.
Yeah.
But we thought that she might have a problem with her crop. And so we were giving her some Vet RX from Tractor Supply, and that resolved itself. So I think we've been doing pretty well for ourselves so far in terms of ailments.
We haven't lost anyone that didn't need to go.
Yes, exactly. And, so we had to put down the one rooster. We did order two roosters from Meyer, but they missed sexed one. And so we got three roosters. And the one that I had to put down was James, and he was just absolutely full of testosterone and go, go,
He
go,
was way too much.
harassing everybody. He was a menace. And I think one of our main jobs on the farm is managing the system. And unfortunately, that means that there are incompatible individuals in that group that cause way too much chaos,
Yeah.
that are starting to hurt other animals, and they just don't fit here.
Yeah, at a certain point, you just have to say, is this what is best for the flock?
And since we don't want to eat any of these animals, it's very challenging to have to put one down. And unfortunately, James had to go. But I think that was the best decision that we made. And the same thing with our duck Crook. He was way too aggressive with the girls, constantly trying to mate, literally every 3 to 5 minutes, chasing them, pinning them down.
Just
They
attacking them.
Right. It
Yeah.
wasn't mating at that point. It was just, being a douche. And he had to go as well.
Yeah, and that's about the management. You have to make those decisions as gut wrenching as they are.
Yeah, you really do. Because obviously you raise them from little babies and you're there every single day of their life. And then you have to make that decision that they have to go. It's very challenging.
Oh yeah.
I think one of the things that I want to talk about in a future book is how to feed the chickens from the property. I think going forward, that's a huge issue that we need to plan for. And with the available space, with the more space you have, the more plants you can grow to feed them. I know during the winter time, having more or less an evergreen type herbaceous forage around, so that would be cold season grasses. In this climate here in zone 7, that would be clovers, salad burnet. Oh, and also wheat grass would be really helpful for them to graze during the winter time. And then also during the summer, they would have mulberries, peaches, apples, pears, plums, and even grinding up acorns and chestnuts in the fall would be helpful as well, to try to extend that season and extend the food production on site. So that's something that we're going to be working towards and evolving as time goes on. But I'm definitely concerned about sourcing their food in the coming years. Because I think, as we saw with the Netherlands, how they're going to be shutting down farms, I think it'll be coming here as well. And that means that it's going to be challenging to source food from Tractor Supply or the hardware store.
Yeah, so it's something that we can kind of focus on now so that we can create those parallel systems and be able to feed the girls from the land sustainably.
Yeah, and that means like during the growing season, we have like the fruit trees out in rows in between the different lanes that they're able to go out to as we rotate around the central pen. And so we have cherry trees, we have peaches and apples. Like we said with the autumn olives, that's a great source of nutrition during the fall. It's high in lycopene and also essential fatty acids for a berry that's kind of rare. So that's a great source of nutrition for the flock. And then during these very cold winter months in January right now, I can see having cold season grasses, almost like lawn grass, basically in the different rows for them to graze during the winter months because they do like to eat a lot of vegetable matter.
Oh yeah, whenever we open up one of the new runs for them to go into, they're always finding the little greens first, and then the first couple of days, and then they're gone.
Right, yeah, right now they have chicory that were planted last spring that I have them in there so that they can go down and break up the tough clay. They're working very well, but we also found out by accident that they eat sunchokes and they eat sweet potatoes.
Yeah, and they love them.
Yeah, they really did. There was some rabbits were digging up some of the sunchokes, and the exposed ones, the chickens started munching on them as well, which I was really surprised at,
Oh yeah.
which is really cool because the sunchokes are really prolific. So that's a great source of nutrition for them as well. Well, thank you for joining us today on our conversation about all things chickens and our experience with them. We really enjoyed these birds, and we highly encourage others to try to grow some of their own resilience with their flock. And if the big birds aren't really your thing, maybe think about getting the bantams because they're also very productive with eggs, but then they also eat a lot less food. So something to think about as our world is slowly being ripped apart.
And if you like the podcast, you can check out our website, www.newrevenantsociety.com. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.